on treating everyone with inherent worth and dignity. And sometimes as a parent, that's a real challenge. And so Joani is here, Joani Geltman. I've heard her speak 3 times, and she truly will leave you feeling like, 1, you're not alone in this journey, and 2, that you really do have some tools that you can use.
And 3, terrified. Right, Pam?
So welcome, Joani.
Thank you. I remember the last time I came, I guess it was like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, and it was also on a Saturday night, and I remember saying to my husband, who's going to come on a Saturday night to hear me? And then, like, the place was crowded like this, and I'm like, wow, what's going on here in Stow, you know? So thank you all for coming out on a Saturday night. I hope I will make this like a fun Saturday night for you. So just a couple of businessy things. I write a blog that I write on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and usually I try to keep up, you know, if there's a particular news story, you know, I'll try to riff off that. To this Tuesdays, I think will be, I write for the Boston Globe. I'm a Globe correspondent there for teen and parent issues. And so there was an article in last week's paper about proms, all the issues that were going on with proms. So, so I'll put the link up to my article in the Globe, and it's about prom-proofing your teen. So prom season must be coming for you too. So you know, there's lots of things in there. So that's free every Tuesday and Thursday, and it's just up all the time. So it's not like if you don't have to watch it just on Tuesday and Thursdays. And I also have this book that I'll be selling at the end. It's called The Survival Guide to Parenting Teens, talking to your kids about sexting, drinking, drugs, and other things that freak you out. It is, the good part about this book is that it's not a read-through book. You don't have to like sit down and take, you know, you can choose, you know, I'm just opening up this 80 different tips in here. I'm opening up to this one, helping your teen with remembering. Just forgot your blank again. So, you know, so you just kind of keep it in your bookcase or in the glove compartment of your car. And if you've had a fight like that morning and you've been seething all afternoon, you can go to the index and say, where's that one on attitude? You know, it'll give you, they're 3 pages, you know, like they're quickies. So that's my plug. Okay, so let's just get right to it because I have a lot of information to share. And hopefully by the time you leave here tonight, you will have some new skills, like the second you know, especially if you have a teen who's been out tonight, you know, and you want to check up on what they did. You know, a way of talking to your kids so that the chance that they will respond to what you're saying, the incidence will be higher. And understanding also, and this is as important to me, is for you to understand what is exactly behind so much of the behavior that you see in your teens, and that there is a biological component to it, and hopefully, you know, when you have that distance to step back and say, okay, not that you're going to give in or you're going to, but you're going to say, okay, I get where this is coming from, now I can deal with it without my anger attached to it. Because the problem is that often you're as angry as your kids are, and then you get 2 angry people, and then nothing ever changes. And, you know, you just get into this cycle of, you know, you get mad, they get mad at you, then you're even madder at them, and then they're madder at you, and then everybody doesn't talk, and then you just start all over again. So here's the reason why your kids get mad a lot. And they get mad a lot to you, but they get, you know, they're full of awesome feelings for everybody else. I don't know, you don't ever get to feel those awesome feelings. So the number of new brain connections that happen during adolescence is equal to the number of new brain connections that happen in the first 18 months of life. So if you think of your teen in its newborn stage, it was wholly dependent on you for everything. And then by the end of 18 months, she or he was walking, they had language, they certainly had personality and temperament and likes and dislikes, and wanted to wear this shirt but not that shirt, and wanted to eat this food but not that food, liked to play this game but not that game, and like this book but not, I mean, they, you know, they were, you know, they had a lot going on in them. And that's a lot of brain change that happened in that amount of time. And so your teen is going through that amount of brain change. And so they are literally having feelings that they've never felt before. So a lot of this has to do with lack of experience and history with all these new ideas and thoughts and feelings that they're having in their brains. And so it's not that they didn't have feelings before, and it's not like they didn't think before, but they are seeing the world through a different brain. David Elkind, who wrote a wonderful book called All Grown Up and No Place to Go. Not as good as mine, but no, I'm kidding. No, it's really good. Different kind of book. Apples and oranges. But his label for this new brain is thinking in a new key. And I think that's a way of, it's like a transposing, if you will, of seeing things. So they are having new feelings, new thoughts, new worries. And so these are just some of the things, this list that I have here of what stresses your kids out and what they're thinking about is not for me. I didn't say, oh, I wonder what kids, these are from kids. Kids gave me this list. So, so think about, academics. When your kid is in elementary school, they're not thinking, I wonder how, if my grade really matters to get into the college I want. They're in third grade, they're not worried about college. They're just enjoying learning. They're curious, they're excited, they come home and say, oh, I just learned about these birds today. I mean, it's just the pure joy of learning. There's no and after. That's going on. And then as soon as they hit middle school, even if it's fifth grade, I don't know when your middle school starts, but some middle school starts in fifth grade. So as soon as that transition happens, they all know something's different here. Not that they feel different, but other people are feeling differently, and they take on that, and then there are, and you may, even say things like, well, you better do well in your, in your math class or your English class if you want to get into the, the advanced class, or you want to get into the accelerated class, or you want to get into the honors program, or, because those are all because you know how competitive this world is, and so it's hard not to feel that all the time. And so they hear, starting in 5th and 6th grade, they get it's different now, and they feel your expectations more. It's not like then it's like, what's your homework tonight? And if you're having trouble, did you go back after school and talk to the teacher? And there's a lot of directives given to them to make sure that they are working as hard as they can be. So they feel that stress, okay? They feel your stress about it. They have their own stress about it, because a lot of kids, maybe elementary school, and let's try, there's 2 transitions, the elementary to middle school, and then again from middle to high school. So in each of those transition periods, maybe your kid kind of coasted through middle school. Let's use the middle school, high school one, because that happens a lot more. So your kids kind of coasted through middle school in the sense of, as they're learning all this foundational material, the foundations of, more sophisticated math, like, algebra and geometry, things like that. And as they're, learning the foundational grammar and, all of the English stuff and, history, so they're getting all this foundational stuff. And so they actually didn't have to work that hard, because maybe just they're very naturally intelligent in the way that they can get that material. And then, and all they hear from everybody is, you're so smart. People start defining them. The teacher, oh, you get them, your kids are so smart, they're so bright, they're so quick, they're so fast. We have a lot of descriptive words around intelligence. And then that same kid hits high school. And all of a sudden, now they actually have to work. Because first of all, it's not foundational anymore. There's new stuff kind of on top of that stuff. And it's a lot harder, and it's not coming as fast as it used to. And so what happens is some of those kids start to think, well, maybe I'm a fraud. And they're not saying this out loud, but they start to think, well, maybe everyone's been calling me smart my whole life, but actually, I don't think I'm that smart because I'm having trouble. This is not coming, I actually have to do a lot of, this isn't coming to me like it used to come. So maybe I'm really not smart. Everybody thinks I am, but I'm really not. And so what you see often is kids who are, in terms of intellectually and, could be doing this work, but they start to doubt themselves. And they, rather than worrying about failure, they just don't do it. And so a lot of times you'll see kids who had been done, straight A students in middle school, and then they get to the high school and they're not doing their homework, and they have a lot of anxiety all of a sudden, which maybe they've never had before, and there's a lot of homework avoidance, and you find them they're in homework holes, and their grades are, not that they're necessarily bad, but and so there's a lot of anxiety about this, and so. it's an awareness. It's really important to know that. It's not just that your kid is lazy. It's how you interpret these behaviors. So if it's just like they're not working hard enough, they're lazy, they're spending all their time on on social networking, well maybe it's not that it's just that they're lazy, it's that they're avoiding it because they're worried that they're going to fail, and it's easier to avoid and not do something than do it and not do well at it, if these are kids so there's a lot of stress around academics. Things like sports, I mean, they were saying sports fees. Sometimes people's financial situations change, and things that, kids could do, and I'm gonna generalize this just to family life, that, there's stresses in families that kids are aware of, and whether it's a financial change or maybe someone's been laid off, or maybe there's you have an elderly parent who's ill and you're responsible now for taking care of that parent, and you're stressed. You're stressed. You have less time. Your kids will feel that, and what you want is hoping they'd have a lot of empathy for you, like, oh, you're working so hard. Is there anything I can do to help? But no, that's not what you're getting. What you're going to get is, you're never around, or you're like, oh, busy, you're busy again, and it's because it's all about them. And that's part of adolescent narcissism. It's really normal. But to you, it feels like they're selfish and they're self-centered, and they are selfish and they're self-centered. And the reason is because all of this is going on in their heads. And much of it is not stuff that they're talking about with you, because it kind of gets stuffed down. So talk about body image. You've got kids who are going through puberty. And, talk about distracting feelings. They have no history and experience with sexual feelings. So they are having sexual feelings for the first time. Boys are having wet dreams. They're like, oh my God, something bad is happening to me. Things are happening to their bodies that, they're taking a form and a shape that they may or may not be comfortable with. Maybe they're that tall kid in the class and everybody's making fun of them. Or maybe they're that short boy who hasn't had his growth spurt and everybody's making fun of them. Or their perception is that other people are making fun of them. Or maybe, they're that girl who has big breasts or no breasts, or they have bad acne, or, something. Puberty is really hard. I teach at Curry College. I've been there for many, many, many years. The last class was Thursday. And I teach Intro to Psych and Human Development, so there's always a portion of the class about adolescence, and I ask them to write about their own puberty. And, it's amazing to me the stories that these kids are writing to me about really how painful, and it's not even stuff that I could tell they ever talked to about anyway. They just kind of stuffed it in, like just, they had a bad pimple one day, or there are a lot of kids suffering with acne. Height is a huge issue. Body shape is for girls, really huge issue. Height is a big issue for boys. So this is all in there, so so this impacts your relationship. Your relationship with them is changing. And it should change. That's just the natural course of things. And they are dealing with what we call separation individuation. It's the ability to step back and say, how am I like you and how am I not like you? And so that's a lot of the attitude comes from them saying, you can't tell me what to do anymore, because now that this new identity is forming, it's like you can't tell them what to do anymore. I mean, and that's really the truth, is that they have an opinion now. And they realize that they can voice that opinion. They don't quite know how to do it right, and they lack an edit button, and they say it, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. But they say it in ways that are not always the kindest. And so, but they're, they are realizing that they are not just clones of you, and that they see the world differently, and they have different, I think the core values are always going to be there, and they will be there 10 years from now. But passions and interests, the kinds of kids that they want to be friends with, the kinds of classes they enjoy in school, maybe you want them to be more into this, but they're more into that, and you have got to wrap your head around that. Not they have to wrap their head around what you want for them. So it's a huge adjustment for you, because you may have had a trajectory in your head. Maybe they gave you that trajectory. Oh, when they were in elementary school, or were they in middle school, they were so great at XYZ. And now maybe that's not interesting to them anymore. And so I liken this to sort of like a buffet table. And they're, that's sort of a metaphor is that they're at the buffet table. And, when they were kids, you would choose the food for them because you didn't want them to waste it. You knew exactly what, you'd go to the chicken fingers and the, and the fry. I mean, you knew what they liked. And now they're looking at that buffet table and they're realizing, wait a second, there's stuff on here. There's sushi. You never told me about this raw fish thing. I like this, and just they're looking at everything going, you didn't tell me about this, and they're excited about these new options in life, which they've never. So that's all in there. So the separation and their relationships with their friends are changing. In each of these transition points, they're losing. Am I in your way? Yeah, I'll stand this way. They're losing. They're changing friends. There's a big transition that happens, and if your kid is the one that gets left by other kids, this can be really painful. If your kid is, maybe, his friends have moved on. They're like ready to party hardy now. I mean, they love being a teenager and they, everything that means to them. And your kid is not quite there yet, which is fine. But then, weekends come, they're not invited to the same events. Now they're home more. And especially ninth grade boys, really a hard time, a very big transition time, because ninth grade girls, the older boys love the ninth grade girls. It's like fresh meat from their perspective, but the ninth grade boys are really left behind that year because they're the older boys sort of, they have sort of usurped their power in a lot of ways, whether it's on the field, if they're, on a sports team, maybe they're not playing as much anymore because they're JV or varsity even, but then they just sit so there's just a lot of stuff going on. So what happens is all this stuff is going on all the time, and it's not that they can articulate these at any given moment. But here's how it affects you. So it's the end of a school day, and you're ready for the check-in. You've been thinking all day. Maybe they had a quiz. Maybe they were supposed to go back after school. Talk to the teacher about some help. Maybe they had a game or practice or a rehearsal if they're music or theater. Whatever it is. And you're like all day long. You're like, oh, I hope they talk to the teacher. I wonder how they did on that quiz. I didn't see them study. They're on their phones all night. They're down there and there's Instagram and so all night long you're like thinking, and then. They walk in the house, and you walk in the house, and you start off nicely. You start off with, "Hey, honey, how was your day?" And what you get is, "Fine, the day was fine." So you get kind of that grunt thing. And so what happens is it can go one of two ways. So one way it goes is you're like, "I got to nip that attitude thing in the bud." So you're like, "Excuse me? I just asked you how your day was. That did not require an attitude." What attitude? I don't know what you're talking about. But you asked me how my day was. I told you my day is fine. So, and you're like, I don't like it. Give me your phone. Give me your iPad. You're taking everything away from them for like the 5 minutes that you can take it away, because, of course, they have to do their homework, and they are doing a group text, and they're all in a group project. And, they got every excuse in the book for why they have to have everything on and with them all the time. Okay. So that's one way you could go. Or, they give you that grunt and you see that as some kind of a red flag. And so you're like, oh my God, I wonder if something's wrong. Honey, is everything okay? Did something happen today? Are you okay, honey? What's wrong? I said it was fine, And so now you're like, oh my God, something really has happened. So probably it's nothing big has happened. And they're not really having an attitude. It's not really about you. Probably what has happened is a million tiny little things have happened all day long. So maybe they tripped, going up in the bus, they're taking the bus, and they tripped on the bus, and they imagined everybody was looking at them. So, one of the major thing that happens with this new brain is this idea of self-consciousness, this worry about what other people are thinking about them. It is in the driver's seat 100% of the time. So that's where the self-centeredness comes from, and this self-consciousness is that it's literally a brain change, where in elementary school, the way they sort of their sort of self-concept was how they measured up to other people. So it would be like, they'd come home and say, I got the highest grade in the spelling test, or, the teacher said I had the best drawing today. Or, they sort of, become sort of a, where are they in this continuum? That's how they define themselves. And so when they hit adolescence, this new brain kicks in, and then it's not only how do I see myself, but then how do other people see me? So if we use, the spelling test, and, now maybe it's 7th grade, and they come back and they say, I got the highest grade in the spelling test, and everybody thinks I'm a big nerd now. Or maybe everyone thinks I'm really smart. It could go either way. It depends on, the culture there. So, so there's always other things. So when any little thing happens, it's always about what other people are thinking about. Maybe they went to school and, they didn't feel like what they were wearing is what everybody else was wearing. Maybe they got the text in the morning, hey, let's all wear white t-shirts today, the girls. And then they have no clean white t-shirts. And I have no clean white t-shirts. You never do my laundry. And they start screaming at you, with the t-shirt. They don't have the right shirt, and it's all your fault. And so, then maybe, they raise their hand in class, and if it's a boy, maybe his voice cracked, while he was, talking, and that was embarrassing. And then maybe, this girl has a crush on this boy, and, he didn't say hi to her in the hall, and, he must not like me, like everybody else, so a million things happened all day long, and that kind of gets stuffed in. And then, it's not like you can go to the nurse's room and cry about it. They have to suck it up, and then they come home, and they even though they're still on their phones, and they're you'd think, oh, they just want to take some time alone, but no. But they don't. As soon as you say, how is your day, what it brings up for them is just this, this like a belly of stuff, but not one thing stands out. So if you say, did something happen today? Yeah, 1,000 things happened, but don't ask me what they are because I don't know. It's just like this big feeling that happens. So one way to deal with this is, rather than taking it personally, in this particular instance, it's not really an attitude, it's just a not having an answer for you. And not wanting to dissect their day in the same way that you want to dissect their day. So, some kids will be happy to, and it depends on the day. It depends on the day. So, but if it's a day where they're just saying, no, what you can say is, you can use what I call I get it moments. And these are ways of you showing your understanding of what they're feeling. You're not agreeing or disagreeing. You're just showing understanding. I get it's been a long day. Let's check in later. So, you give them a pass. It's like, I'm not going to sit here and ask 1,000 questions and have them go, I don't know, it's fine. I got a good, and it's very unsatisfying. You're still not getting what you want, which is information. So then what you're going to do is that later, later in the evening, maybe you go up to their room, and maybe there's like the laundry basket that's been sitting, on the landing going upstairs, and all they have to do, you'll do the laundry. You'll sort the laundry. All they have to do is take the basket upstairs and put the laundry away. And this is like an ongoing thing, going back and forth. Did you put your laundry away? And then they're pulling stuff out of it and throwing, it becomes a mess. So maybe you bring the laundry upstairs. It's kind of an opener. And you bring it in their room, and then in this tone of voice, and this is really important here, in this tone of voice, you say, hey, so how was that quiz today? Which is very different than, how'd you do in that quiz today, right? So they're waiting for that from you. They're waiting for the, so how'd you do that? Did you go back and talk to the teacher? You know that tone of voice. And so when you use that tone of voice, it's a conversation stopper. Okay, that just clues them in. They hear judgment, they hear criticism, so there's absolutely no motivation for them to go any further. And so it's really important that if you take, again, you're going to take away a lot of different things tonight. Everybody's going to walk away with something rising to the top. But if anything's going to rise to the top, try to have it that tone of voice. Because it's really, it is such an important, if your goal is you want your kids to want to talk to you, you can't parent a teenager the same way you parent a younger child. It requires different skills. Kids in elementary school and younger appreciate authority, Okay? That authoritarian voice, it works for them because in terms of their moral development, they understand this whole authority figure thing, and they know that you're up here and they're down there, and that's comfortable to them because they know that someone's taking care of them, and it all works that way. But when they hit adolescence, that feels, very controlling to them, and they will respond to it negatively. It's just the way it is because they're feeling their oats now. They're realizing they have a seat at the table, and they're going to let you know that. So that tone of voice is a game changer. So there's a reason why this voice issue is such a big deal, and here's why. They did a study at Brown University, and they wanted to see if the teenage brain and the adult brain functioned the same when they were given a task of identifying motion. That was what they were trying to see. So everybody was given a number of cards with faces on them showing different emotions. So like one face would have been this, which would have been fear and shock. And then they had them in the MR scanner, and then they would show them these different human faces, and they wanted to have them label the emotion, and they wanted to see what part of the brain was activated when they were doing this task. It's talking to me. You telling me? And okay, so when the adults did the task, they got all the faces correct. They could, it was fear and joy and frustration and and disgust and the whole range of human faces. And when they asked the teens to do it, many of the teens mislabeled those faces. They saw anger where there wasn't anger. They saw frustration where there wasn't frustration. They saw fear where there wasn't fear. It was mostly the, sort of the down kind of feelings. But they saw different things in the human face than adults see. And then when they looked at the scans of the brain, the part of the brain that was in the highest activation was not the frontal cortex, which is what the adult brain did. It was the amygdala in the sort of the rear, the emotional center of the brain. So literally, you live in a thinking brain. They live in a feeling brain. I mean, obviously, it doesn't mean they don't think. But when something gets their emotional life, if something gets charged up, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, whether if it has some kind of emotional part of it, then that's the part of the brain that goes into action, not this part of the brain. So as soon as they hear, so how'd you do in that quiz today? That emotional brain kicks right in, and they feel criticism and whatever, and then they go off. I said it was on, and then you're reacting to what's coming out of their mouth. And so, but when you do it in a different voice, what you're hopefully is that you're not activating that part of the brain, so that you actually could have a conversation. So it is biological in that sense. And so I call it the awesome brain, because this brain is what's in the driver's seat a good deal of the time in terms of why kids are engaging in risky behaviors. So, you can imagine, kids are sitting around with their friends, or they're online with their friends, or they're in a group text, and you're like, oh my God, we should do this weekend, oh my God. And they're like, I know, they're feeling so awesome. And everybody, the brain gets, turned on, and everybody's like, oh my God, it's gonna be so great. And they're not even thinking they should ask you. So oftentimes what you get when they come to you is a demand, but not a permission question. It's like, we're going to the, and you're like, I don't think so. And so, and so that's why, because it's this part of the brain, this is not they're not thinking, that's probably not a smart thing to do to go to a concert that's 3 a.m. on a Sunday night. Not like, I don't think my parents will say, they're like, oh my God, we're gonna go to a concert, it's gonna be so fun. And they're literally doing it. They're at the concert in their heads. They are at this. So by the time they come to you, and they, they make their statement of demand. When you say no, you're saying no to an emotional brain, not to a thinking. So you're giving them a logical explanation, but well, honey, don't you think that's ridiculous? And then that's why you end up getting into, there's a disconnect there, because you're talking with a logical, sane brain in that moment, and they're in an emotional brain. And so that's a really important thing to remember around when you get into, so it's like a volcano. You have to sort of think of it like a volcano. And once that volcano is in eruption mode, you just have to wait until it quiets down. You can't just, you can't stuff it in, and saying things like, now just calm down. That's really not gonna work. So understanding this emotional brain, it's a battle. They're having this battle. So oftentimes, I'm sure you've said this, they will have done something questionable, and let me, frame it as positively as I can. And then you say, "What were you thinking?" And they're like, and I'm saying to you, not thinking, feeling, but not thinking. And so the reason it is so important to understand this is because when it comes to preparing your kids, and we'll talk more about this when we get to risky behavior stuff, but is that just saying to a kid you're not allowed to do something, here's what the rules are. When your kids are in elementary school, that's absolutely perfect because they are very rule bound. That is developmentally where they are with the rules. They like the rules. They like the structure. They respond to that. But if you just say, well, you know what the rule is. You're not allowed to go to somebody's house, if the parents aren't home. It's like, I know, it's the rule. Well, what you're not getting is that they get to that house, and they're like, oh my God, we're our parents aren't home. Everyone's like ready to go in that house, and they're like all excited, and this part of the brain is all activated. You're saying you're going to get grounded if I find out you went there is not helpful. Just saying you're not allowed to doesn't tap into this part of the brain. And so the work is, and we'll talk about this in a second, is helping them to strategize before they go out. So you start to help them use the frontal cortex of their brain before it's all excited and awesomed out, so that when they get to those situations, they may have at least some information to draw on, as opposed to you're not allowed to and you're going to get grounded. Grounding is nowhere in their it has nothing. It literally went in one ear at the other. Yeah, I'll get grounded. They don't care. But there was an interesting study, by the way, that was saying that these days, which I was fascinated, kids would rather be grounded than have their phones taken away from them. They would rather be home and do nothing, but be able to be on their phones all night long. Like that is like fine. Because they're still in communication with everybody. So I just found that fascinating. Yeah, right. Gonna have to have a phone. Okay, so understanding this emotional brain versus the thinking brain. What I'm gonna go into now is what I call the 4 ways of fighting. And because so much of parent-teen relationship is, everyone's sort of in their corner fighting for their day in court. Everybody wants what they want. And so I'm going to give you, these are for me the 4 most popular, if you can use that word, kinds of arguing that you get in with your teens. And then I'm going to give you the strategies for each one of them. So the first one is I call the gotcha fight. And the gotcha fight is that that sort of snarky, sarcastic, what I call these gotcha moments. So one of the things that kids love to do as teenagers is, now that they've got this new brain that allows them to, analyze and conceptualize, and they use these in the academic world. They're doing much more sophisticated thinking in their history, and they're, when they're reading stories, and they're able. It's not just a who, what, where kind of question. Now they're, looking between the lines and thinking things through. So. Gossip is analyzing. Half the stuff the kids are doing online is analyzing. It's just, it just seems kind of like negative analyzing. Like, why are you doing that? But so part of that is stepping back from you, and one of the things they realize is that you are not perfect anymore. And they, and when your kids are in elementary school, basically, you might be unfair sometimes, because you wouldn't let them stay up later, or, wouldn't have an extra cookie after dinner or something. But when they get, but they still see you as their number one. You're like, you are still pretty perfect. Adults are perfect, teachers are perfect, grown-ups know it all. But as kids move into the adolescent years, they get that, in fact, you're just human, just like they are. And so that's like a thumbs up moment for them. It's like exciting. I'm not perfect, and neither of my parents are either. Yay, yippee, I feel so much better about myself now. So that's going on. And so because this edit button is not really, quite in working order yet, they say what they're thinking a lot. So, they sort of niggle you. So like they'll make fun of what you're wearing. They'll make fun of what you're cooking. They'll make fun of your voice. Just be quiet. I don't even like the sound of your voice anymore. And a lot of kids will say that because of remember that study, that Brown study, it's like the sound of your voice just pushes buttons in them, because for whatever it is, just don't speak anymore and just learn sign language. I love it. Maybe that's the key to all this. So some of the stuff is kind of, I'm not talking about crossing the line. These are like, when you come to pick me up at the soccer game, don't wear those jeans that, such and such and such and such, and don't come right from the gym, and you better take a shower before you come. And oh my God, is that your new haircut? Like, don't you think it's do this? And, they're just so free. They're so free. They feel so free to share with you. Okay, so parents tend to handle this in one of two ways. One way is to say, that really hurts my feelings. That's really mean, really hurt my feelings. And so how that translates to them is, I hurt their feelings? Oh my God, really? Not in a sadistic, I'm gonna hurt their feelings, but like, I have that kind of power now? Like I could hurt their feelings? Like that changes the dynamic of the relationship, right? I mean, in elementary school, it's like you're here, they're here. Now it's like, woo! And you don't want that dynamic in your relationship because, not that you want to be this down on them, but you don't want them to feel this way. I mean, maybe sometimes you'll be this way sometimes, but you don't want to be them up here and you're down here. So, when they do that, so one way is to say my feelings are hurt. The other way is to say, don't talk to me like that. That's rude. But they just did, right? They did just talk to you like that. So, saying something like that just, again, puts you in this, like, you don't have control over what comes out of their mouths, which is the truth. You don't have control. You want to motivate them to not do it anymore. That's really the deal here. So it's kind of like bullying. I mean, these are like bullying comments. They're made to diminish. So, what do you do with a bully? You don't want to give them that power. You never want to give the bully the idea that, yes, in fact, they can make you feel bad. So the tactic that you might want to use in these situations is you don't want to do it back to them. Oh yeah, well, you're not looking so hot either. That shirt isn't, I mean, even though that's like what you want to say, that's not what you're going to say. But you're going to do something like this. You're going to go up to them and you're going to put your arms around them and you're going to pinch their little cheek and you go, oh, you're so adorable when you're bright. I love you. You're going to do something that is completely out of, like, they're expecting you to, like, get mad or be insulted. And, you're just, because if you just let them, like, you're a big, really, are your feelings hurt? Seriously? Like, I know you can't physically, and if your feelings are hurt, toughen up, okay? I mean, go to toughen up school. Okay, you have got to grow a thicker skin. But if they can't get a rise out of you in any way, if they can't, get you angry, getting you angry is fun for them. That's a thumbs up moment for them. So it's not like they're afraid of your anger unless you never get angry. And then, when you get angry, it has meaning. But generally, there's a lot of just, yelling that goes on kind of all the time. And so for them, it's not like scary. It's like, oh, she's yelling. Oh, he's yelling. Oh, what else is new? So just you want to do something that communicates you're fine. You're just completely fine. And you are so cute. I love that. And that'll be the end of it. I mean, not that one time. You have to, again, any of the tips that I'm going to give you tonight, it's not like, I did it, I tried it, and it didn't work. And I'm like, okay, how many times did you try it? Once. No. It's like the way kids learn, the way you learn, where anybody learns some new behavior is that it has to be repeated often. So when you think about how you taught your kids to say please and thank you. So there they were, 3 years old, and I want a snack. And you'd say, so what do you say? Please, may I have a snack? And then, you give them the snack, and then they start eating. You say, what do you say? Thank you. And, you would do that 1,000 times a day, right? 1,000 times a day for probably 3 years, until they were like 6. And then your parents would call you and say, your kid is so polite when they come to my house. It just becomes automatic. Please and thank you, you're done, okay, I did my job. And so any of the tips that I'm giving you tonight require consistency. And that's really, so that's why don't try to do everything at once. Like, don't run home and go, okay, I'm going to do this with a voice, and then I'm going to, pick something and practice that, and then move on to something else. But don't try to do everything at one time, because your kid's going to, first of all, figure it out. What's going on with you? Are you wasn't got a medication? Like, I don't get this. So when this happens, when they do that little sarcasm, you have to have a little repertoire of behaviors. Don't think you're saying the same thing every time, but use a little humor. These are the times that would call for some humor, and play around with that and try. So those are the times. Just kind of play around with it and try to find something that works for you. But keep that one in perspective. Don't let it go too hurty or too angry. Okay, so that's the gotcha one. Okay, the no one. So when kids hit adolescence, they they have an image now of what a teenager should be able to do. And they get this from, being online and seeing what other kids are doing, from watching movies, from, now there's this new stage, teenagerness. Teenagers should be able to go to the dentist, can stay up late, they should be able to stay on their phones all the time, they should go to people's houses where there's no parents, they can drink, they can do drugs, they can have sex, there's like, look at all of these new things. It used to be going to the playground, going down the slide. Now that's changed for what's fun to do. So they're going to come to you with various, and again, every family's different in terms of what they can and can't do, but your kids are going to come to you, and there are going to absolutely be things that are unreasonable and unsafe. That's what these are about. This is not your knee-jerk reaction, no, when they've come to you and said, I got to go to Staples tonight, for my project, and you're like, no, I'm too tired. You should have asked me earlier. I'm not talking about that. You can say no to that too, but that's not the kind of. This is the, going to somebody's house. You know the ones I'm talking about. Okay, so here's the thing. When you say no. Remember that awesome brain? Okay? So when you say no to whatever it is that they have come to you and said, we're doing, we're going, we're buying, I want this, I want to buy this, whatever it is, they already have bought it, they've gone in their head, that's what they've done. So when you say no, they are not going to go, that's a really good parenting call. Thank you for keeping me safe. Thank you so much. No! As soon as you say, the second that no comes out of your head, this volcano is going to explode, okay? There is nothing you can do to make it not explode. It is now exploding. It's going. And here you're going, well, what do you think I was going to say? You think I was going to let you go to the school night and this, and you're going on and on and on, and you're using this part of the brain. You're being logical, and you're being rational, and you're, giving, of course, the reasons why this is, what we say in Yiddish is verkackte, which is, crazy, crazy. So you're going to say no, and and what's going to change now is that it's about expectations. Your kid's going to flip out on you, okay? Your kid's going to flip out on you. Now, as a parent, you have a choice of how you handle that flipping out, okay? It's expected. If they didn't flip out, that would worry me, honestly. If your kid is not flipping out on you, that's not a good sign. I'm going to be honest with you. You want them to go crazy on you. Because if they're not flipping out, it either means they're afraid of you, or they don't have enough inner strength to combat you. And they're learning to stand up for themselves. That's a good thing. Okay, that doesn't mean you're like, oh yeah, that's good. But they are practicing standing up for themselves, because that will translate to standing up to their friends. That will translate to standing up to a boss, or when they need to, except for the kids that do that in my class. Because there are certainly those kids that when they were 3 or 4 had really in 5 and 6 had great verbal skills and very intelligent kids, and you would say to them, you'd say, okay, bedtime, time to stop playing, playing with your whatever, and they'd say, if you would just give me 10 more minutes, I would be, and they would give you the most rational, because they had great command of language, and you'd be going, oh, they are so adorable, so smart, and you'd give into it, and you'd say, yeah, okay, because because they made it's such a great case. Well, that got parked away. So there's definitely those kids who have had a history with you that maybe they were able to negotiate their way into things from things that you didn't like, okay? So if that, we'll talk about that in a second. So this is, you've said no, they flip out, okay? And here's all you're gonna do, okay? Here's all you're gonna do. If you feel clear about this no, if it is unsafe, unreasonable, and this, there's no way you're changing your mind, now you can be on their side. Okay? Now you don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to, get in there and lecture them about all. You don't have to do that, because they're not listening to you anyway. It doesn't matter. I mean, that's just, you're just getting yourself all worked up for no reason. So now you can say, honey, I get you're really pissed off. I get, I know that was you really wanted to do that. I'm really sorry. And that's my best tip of the day. That little shoulder shrug. That's the period at the end of your sentence. And that's really what it's about. It's like, I get it. I know you feel really pissed. I'll take it. You're mad. And then if you end the discussion, there's nowhere else for them to go, right? I mean, once you get defensive and your voice has raised, they now have somewhere to go. Now they're like, we're in a fight. Well, in a fight, somebody wins. Right now, there's this engagement. They want an engagement. That's their goal. And if you don't allow yourself to get engaged in something and show empathy, so here's an example. I had a parent that I worked with who had her daughter was around 16 and a half, and she had a best friend, the daughter, that she has known, she was friends with since, it probably happens in a town like this, it was a small town, friends with since, they were in kindergarten or, nursery school together. And the parents are friends, the mother knows the kid or whatever. So the kid comes home from school, her daughter, let's give her name, her name is Katie. I'm making this up, I don't remember what her name is. And so Katie comes in from school, Mom, Lori just got her license, oh my God, she's gonna come and pick me up and driving, oh my God. Okay, so Katie and Lori have been waiting their whole life for one of them to get their license. I mean, they've been playing in the tot lot, at 4, driving in the little play cars. I mean, this is like momentous, totally momentous. So the mother, in the moment, gets really excited too, because she knows this kid, Lori. She's excited for him. She goes, oh, honey, that's yay for Lori. And then all of a sudden it clicks in, oh, honey, you can't go in the car with Lori. She just got her license today. Sneak around it a week from now, but not today. She just got her license today. You know what the law is. You can't. So she did her rational why she couldn't go. But remember that awesome brain. These kids were in the car. The radio's on, or the cell phone's plugged into the music. I don't know. Spotify's on, and the windows are. And they're doing it. They're in it. And now the mom, has crushed that dream. So the daughter completely flips out. I mean, of course, completely flips out. And starts screaming at her mother. You're smothering me! You never let me do anybody else's parents! I can't believe, And for whatever reason, the mom just flipped. She didn't, and that's the next one, we'll get to that, but she just didn't have it in her at that moment. And she was like, well, if you don't like it, you can live somewhere else. Fine, I'm going then. Fine, go again. The girl, goes up and packs her backpack, and she's gonna walk, to where this girl lives, which is like around the block. And the mother knows the other mother, so she calls her. It's all that part of it all. It's not like unsafe, and she'll be fine. And so, in that situation, had that mother just said, oh, just this way I'm gonna do it for you. Oh, honey, I am so sorry. Oh my God, I get how you must have been looking forward to this. Oh, this must be horrible. I'm so sorry. It's against the law. You just can't. I'm sorry. Done. Completely done. The girl might have still fumed. She might have been screaming, ranting, and raving. I mean, she can do it. The kid can go. Of course, she has to get it out. She's got to vent it out. But you are done. And now you can comfort them. You can comfort them in their anger and their frustration. And it puts you back here. right? Because and this is where the power comes in. The power is not, you better not do this. That's not power. The power comes in when you're in control of yourself. That's where your power is. And as long as you can do that, then you stay up here. But as soon as you lose control, you either get here or here. Because, sometimes you lose more control than your kid does. So, and, say things you wish you hadn't said. So that's in the best possible world, that's how you deal with that fight where your kid goes off on you. Now, the pushing buttons. That's when that doesn't work, okay? Because the truth of it is, it's hard to do that. I mean, we're sitting here and say, but, when you've had a long day and you have a lot of stress and you have more than one kid, there's a lot of things going on in your life, and when your kid comes to you in an emotional brain and you're sort of half in yours because of everything else that's going on, but your sane brain is also in operation, you can do two things. You can have your brain working in two ways. You don't have the same controls that you would have. So a lot of times you're going to lose it too. And that's just human, right? That's human. I completely get that. But there's a strategy for when that happens, because that's going to happen more often than no. That's a dream come true if you can do that. But more likely, this is going to happen, that they're going to push your button, that it's just going to set something off, and you're going to lose it. And when that happens, your screech voice is out, your veins are popping, when that is. So you're going to let that happen. I get that's going to happen. And hopefully now I'm planting the seed. So what you're going to do after you've had your moment of being out of control, that will click in. I'm out of control. Like the first thing is that you have to recognize that you're out of control. Oftentimes we blame the kid. The kid's out of control, but really, if you look at it, you're both out of control equally. So what I want you to do is to stop, and in this voice, you're going to say, you know what, we're both out of control, and you own it too. This is all modeling. A lot of, the best parenting is modeling when you make mistakes, because they need to see alternative ways of handling things. So, we're both out of control right now. We need to take a break. And then you leave, okay? You walk away. Don't then say, and again, tone of voice is everything here. So if you're like, we're both out of control right now, just get out of here. Okay, that's not really what I'm talking about, okay? That's not really going to help because, honey, we're both out of control. We got to take a break. And then you leave. Don't don't try to control what they should do and where the person that you are in control of is yourself. So you leave. Okay? You go get your dog and go take a walk. You go get in the car and go get a coffee. You go into your laundry room and scream. But whatever you do, don't just walk into the next room. Like if you're in your TV room, don't just walk into the kitchen. Or it goes in, you have to remove yourself because here's the thing, your kids are extraordinarily motivated. And they don't want this fight to stop. Right? There's absolutely no motivation. They don't want to sit there and let their amygdala calm down. They don't. They're not. They want to get you. They want to keep you angry, and because they want to get you to the point of saying fine. That's their dream. Okay, their dream is to keep that anger going, so that they can get you to give in. So you go somewhere. Okay. Now some of you may have kids who what I call are the chasers. Okay. And these are the kids that, don't take the no, and even though that wasn't a no, that was just like, I'm out of control. And they will follow you around the house. So they will, wherever you go, they're right behind you. And, and if you go up to your bedroom and close the door, they have no boundaries. They will open that door and they will come in and they will say, basically, I'm not finished yet, even though that's not what they're saying. So here's what you're going to do if that happens. Because again, I want you to feel like you have some element of control. So now when I first used to suggest it, it was kind of as a joke. But now parents are really doing it. And they'll text me or email me and say, oh my God, Joani, this is like a dream that's worked. So if you have the chaser, and then what you're going to do is you're going to turn to them in this voice. And you're going to say, honey, I'm just about to take a shower. So I'll be getting naked. Going to be getting naked. So, if you want to join, whatever, talk to me. Now that's the end of that. Start, you're done with that. So they're gone. Okay, so that buys you some time. Okay, that buys you some time. And then, maybe, you give yourself what you need. Make sure you give yourself what you need. Maybe you need an hour. Some people maybe only need 15 minutes. But I mean, because now you're going to have to go back to the second one, and you're going to have your control back. So then, however much time you do, then you go to where they are, okay? You go to their room, you go wherever they're going. And what you say to them, because now that volcano has kind of gone back, and now you say to them, you don't say this, you don't say, honey, here's what I was trying to say. Okay, that's the kiss of death, okay? So if you immediately try to tell them first, it's going to start all over again, okay? So you're going to say to them, tell me what it is you wanted me to hear, okay? Tell me what it is that you wanted me to hear. So in this voice. So you're saying, I really want to hear what you have to say. And that's what your kids want. They want you to want to listen to them. That's really what they want. And so now that they're calm and that awesome brain is not turned down, they may have a new plan. Or they may have, they've thought about it. Now they're using this part of the brain instead of this part of the brain. And maybe there is something there that you actually can work with. In which case, then how great is that? You can say, okay, I totally get that. Let's figure out a way that we can make this work. Okay, so that would be the best news ever. But, that doesn't always happen. And, maybe it's still a no. Okay, maybe whatever the thing is, it's unsafe, unreasonable, whatever those things are. And you're just, but now you're in control. And so now you can do the, honey, I wish this could happen, but I'm so sorry. It just, one-liner, whatever your one-liner is about why it can't happen, I'm so sorry. And you're done. Let them, kick and scream, let them shout and, whatever. But you're done because you've gotten yourself back under control. But at least gives you the opportunity to find common ground if there is any. And if not, then you move on. Okay, so that's the pushing buttons one. Okay, then we have the crossing the line one. So the crossing the line is that everybody here has a different line, a different red line. And that is when, the outright disrespect is happening. When they have said, I hate you, or they have said, F you, or they, or more colorful, but I'm being taped, so I can't do that. But, this is when they really have crossed that line. And kids, I can't say, I'm not going to say kids shouldn't be allowed to do that because the truth of it is you don't have control of what comes out of their mouth. But I want you to feel that when that happens, you have something more than, don't you ever talk to me that way. Because again, when you say that, first of all, your kid knows that. On some level, they know that saying F you to your parents is like not, that's like not a cool thing to do. They know saying I hate you, or they know whatever it is that they know is really, they know that. They don't have to be lectured about that. Here's what you're going to do. This is a two-parter, okay? So your kid says something to you that has crossed the line. You're going to look at them, straight in the eye, and you're going to say, wow, I can't believe you would say that. Just in a very calm voice, and then you turn around and you leave. Okay, don't lecture them about it. How dare you? Do you know how that was? Don't even go there. Just walk away, okay? Now, the tendency with parents when this kind of thing happens is you're grounded, I'm taking away the car, give me your phone, give me your computer, give me your iPad. You have like the 6 things, that you feel like are your go-to punishments. And the problem with using those kinds of consequences for what I call a relationship violation is that they have there's no connection. There's nothing connects the, disrespect to their phone or their car or it has nothing to do with it. So, I want them to learn to understand that relationships are reciprocal. And when people are treated badly, they don't like to do things for people, they're not like just always available for them. So you do millions of things for your kids all the time, whether it's, driving them, buying them, taking them to their friends, getting their clothes ready so that, their sports equipment for the next day, driving them to practices, a million things. that you do a million things every day. I'm not talking about feeding them. But, all the extra things that they could possibly do on their own. But that's the fun, honestly, why do you have kids? It's, you love being a mother and a father. I mean, you love giving to your kids in that way. They're not here for that long, and that's part of the joy of parenting. And so, I mean, from your kids' perspective, those are just entitlements. Like, I mean, they don't get all that until, they will get it, by the way. I have a 30, they totally get it. And once they leave for college, they start to realize everything you did for them. But they're not going to, now they're way too self-centered to figure that out. So, okay, so what's going to happen is, so they've said something to you, you've turned around and you walked away. That's it. You don't have to do another thing. Because they're going to come to you soon thereafter. Could be that night, it might be the next morning, maybe you drive them to school, maybe and you're gonna, or maybe they come to you, because they have a very short memory. And once they've vented, they're done. They're not sitting around with a knot in their belly, feeling, they're like, they got bigger fish to fry, whatever. They're kind of done with you. But they'll come to you, it's funny because they'll come to you after there's something really horrible, and they'll come to you like, hey, can we go to the mall and go look for my prom dress? Or like just something like, and you're going, really? So what you're going to do is they're going to come to you for something, and you're going to say, not like, you think I'm going to do that for you after the way you just treated me? You're not going to do that. What you're going to say is, honey, I love to do things for you. But when you say, and I want you to say back to them what they said, the words that they use, even if it was a swear word. I want you to say it back to them, because one of the things that happens with teens, especially of this generation of teens, they have no idea what language sounds like anymore, because they are really desensitized and immune. And a lot of that has to do with social networking, because the way they speak on social networking is not how they would speak in person. And they don't hear what that sounds like. So it's not like, I want all parents to have like choral readings, of their text messages. Because, they just, they don't get how this language actually really sounds if you say it out loud. And so so in this particular instance, it's a great way to do that, of saying, because you said, not like, because you used inappropriate language with me. Like that's like, that's like a meaningless word to them. But when you said F you to me, I really want to do that for you today. And that's it. You're done. You don't lecture them about language. You don't lecture them about, hurtful, but you just know. When I've been treated disrespectfully, I don't want to do things for you. Simple as that. And I'm calm about it. I'm not out of control about it. I'm just, I have enough respect for myself. This is you now. I have a respect for myself. And again, that's where your control is. Your control isn't with this. Your control is not with your voice. It's not the loudness of your voice. It's not the meanness in your voice. The control is you. You in your ability to stay in control is where your power lies. Your ability to communicate, understanding, when they need you to be understanding, communicate distance when you need to put that distance there. And so here's an example of that. I had a mom who, she was divorced and remarried. And her daughter was, she was probably about 15 at the time. And the mom had a lot of guilt about this divorce and remarry, because she remarried a guy who had 3 kids. She had 3 kids. So it was really like a yours, mine, and ours. It became a really big family. And, she just, even though she didn't need to feel guilty. It was the best possible world. It was a very lovely life they were leading, and, whatever. And she was very understanding to the kids. It was, things like this are part of life now, and you just have to deal with them. But the daughter really knew how to push her mom's buttons about this. And because the mom was feeling guilt-ridden all the time, she often, the girl was very disrespectful to her and would say really terrible, awful things. And I do parent coaching, so she had called me about this. So, we were working on a strategy for when her daughter became just, very disrespectful to her. So one of the things that her daughter loved to do was to bring up something in the car. Mother would drive her to school in the morning, even though it wasn't that far. She kid could have walked, but that was their time together. There were 6 kids. This was their time. Sometimes they'd stop for coffee in the morning. It was like it was a way for them to have a little pocket of time together. And so, but the daughter sort of learned that if she brought up, some controversial subject in the car about something that she wanted to do or have or something, that was her best chance of getting what she wanted was in the car on the way to school, because her mother was very guilt-ridden. She didn't want her to go to school mad, because when she had a test, she was always worried of, wanting to make sure she was in a good place, right, when she go to school. So this, so we had sort of talked a lot about where these fights happened and, what the mother could do when it happened. So they were on the way to school, and sure enough, the kid brought up something, and, and the mother, was unsafe or unreasonable, and the mother said no in an appropriate way, and the girl completely flipped out on her. And the mother, and we had worked on this, and the mother stopped the car. So she was probably half a mile from school. The mother stopped the car, didn't say one word, not one word. The mother took her keys, she got out of the car, and she left. And there was, she walked, 10 minutes to the local Starbucks in the town or something. And then she went and had a coffee. And she came back, about a half an hour later, because the kid had to get to school. And, the truth of it is your kids want to go to school, because that's where all their friends are. So, they're very motivated to actually go to school. And so the kid was gone and obviously had made it to school. And the mother wasn't going to write an excuse or a late note or anything like that. And all day long, the kid was texting her mother, "Mommy, I'm so sorry, Mommy." Because this mother, for the first time, did not allow herself to be disrespected. She didn't have to use words to communicate that. And, she found many other instances to practice that, not necessarily wasn't always in the car. Luckily, there were lots of other chances for her to try that out. So, it is important for you to assume, and that doesn't mean you can't go somewhere else and cry and scream and do everything, but with your kid, you really want to, just take care of yourself in whatever way that means. So, so that is the 4 ways of fighting. Okay, so we got the 4 there. Okay, moving on. Okay, so we've talked about the brain that has the new thoughts, new feeling, the overloaded brain. We talked about the emotional brain, the emotional volcano. So here's another part of the brain, another way the brain, the sequential thinking is that ability to think things through, okay? So this is, so this impacts your life in many ways. So it, for example, that if your kids would just take their shower the night before and pack their backpacks and get the sports equipment all together and put everything by the door and maybe, have their breakfast cereal in the bowl and, what needs to happen so that, mornings could be smoother. And that's called sequential thinking, okay? And they, on the other hand, are impulse driven. So, you may have said to them, "Don't forget before you go to bed, put your backpack down there." And you're like, "I know, I will." And you're like, "Okay, well, I'm not going there again." I said that. Well, in the moment that you said that, they were like, yeah, I got to put them. But then a text came in. They were taking a selfie, which took an hour. I got to try and different outfits. Maybe they had to study for something in between there. And then they were posting a picture on Instagram, and then they had to follow somebody else's post and then repost from their post. It's like that's another job. The whole social networking, you have to see it as another, it is a full, it is a, I just want to see what that next slide is. It's just it's another, I'll talk about social networking a little bit later, but, it is a full-time job. And so they don't, they're not, and then once they're on social networking, this part of the brain is completely in activation, right? That they're just focused on, what it is that's, they need to, what they're hearing, what they're writing, what they heard, if they're on a group text or I guess a group text. So they're not thinking sequentially. This also happens around the risky behavior issue. Okay, and this takes me back to when you say, if you don't do X, Y, you're not allowed to. Assuming that you're not allowed to is going to be the end all and be all. And again, that works for your elementary school kids. When you're on your bike, You're not allowed to go cross 117. You have to stay in I know, and then they don't. And they're very rule driven about that. Like if they have a friend and it's like, we want, no, not allowed to. They are very rule driven. And that is, in terms of moral development, we call this the heteronymous stage of development, where they rely on other people to set their rules for them. And they need that external structure for them to know what right and wrong is. But when kids hit adolescence, they move into what we call autonomous moral stage of moral development, where they're thinking for themselves now. They're going to make those decisions. You can no longer make those decisions for them. And so your job then is to prepare them and prepare them for situations that they may have never been before. Because remember, adolescence is a stage of firsts. Then they become second, third, fourth, and fifth. But, they don't have all this experience. Parties and alcohol and drugs and sex and making good judgments and, and saying things on Facebook that they shouldn't say. And I'm sorry, who uses Facebook but us? I don't know. I haven't even seen a kid on Facebook. I don't think, it's so funny, like they never. But, on Instagram or, any of the other many, Snapchat or whatever else. And so, they are so in the moment when they're in these situations, and if they haven't been prepared in any way. So what I want you to do is acknowledge and understand that your kids are, when they're out with their friends and in a social situation, this part of the brain is what's in activation. And unless you have done some preparatory work with them, saying words like, I get you're going to be in XYZ situation. I get that you're going to be with your friends some night, and maybe this has already happened. Maybe so here's an example. There was this parent I worked with whose son at the time was in 9th grade. And he was a very talented athlete. So he had made it onto the varsity team as a 9th grader, whatever it was. Maybe it was I say field hockey, that's not a boy sport. Lacrosse or I had a girl, I don't know from sports, but whatever, one of those sports. It was the fall. And this kid was a very tall kid, looked much older than so he's 14, 15 going in. He looked a lot older. But anyway, so it was the first team dinner for this whatever the sport was. And some of the older kids were going to pick him up and take him to the team dinner. And the mom really, they were going to another kid's house where the parents were home, the coach was going to be there. She felt like this was a completely safe situation, thought it was good bonding to be with the kids, and he didn't want to embarrass him by having the parents drop him off. And I think she made the right decision, we thought. So that was, he went to the team dinner, and then they were just supposed to bring him home. It was simple. Team dinner, you come home. So, maybe it was like 9:30, she gets a call from one of her neighbors. And the neighbor was like, I just wanted to let you know that I'm, at the liquor store. They were in a town, so I'm at the liquor store. And I just saw your son coming out of the liquor store carrying a case of beer. And the parents were like, what? So they, immediately, call their son or text him or whatever, and they're like, we are coming, so-and-so just saw you, you put down that beer this instant, and we are coming to get you right away. So, of course, they went ballistic on this kid. Do you know what could have happened, and how could you have been so stupid, and on and on and on and on. That's it, you're grounded, we're taking you, we're picking you up, and you're not, basically you have no life. And so this is when they called me after this was all over. And I totally understood. Of course, this was terrifying. So I say to them, listen, here's what I think happened. I said, I think that, these older boys were like, oh my God, this is great. This kid looks really old. He's a 9th grader. Let's get him to do it. Remember that, let's get Mikey to do it. Remember that cereal commercial? I was like, let's get Mikey to do it. And so, they got Mikey to do it. And what's Mikey going to do? Seriously, what is Mikey's going to go, oh no, I can't do this. This is illegal. Here is this kid, with a 9th grade boy's dream come true. He's hanging around with junior and senior boys, And, they're asking him to do so. I totally get how this might have happened with him. And of course, the parents have never had a conversation with him about, well, you're going to be hanging out with a lot of older kids now. That was the missing conversation, okay? Because when he was in that situation, he had nothing to call upon. So I'm sure there was a part of him that was terrified, but because of that sense of self-consciousness and worry what other people are thinking, there was no way this kid was going to say, I'm not going to do that. Just no way. It wasn't going to happen. Unless he was the strongest, most confident ninth grader on the face of this earth. But most ninth grade boys in that situation would have done exactly the same thing. And every parent would have reacted in the same way. How could you do something so stupid? Okay? So your job is to anticipate situations. Okay? Your job is to say, no kid is all angel and all devil. All adolescents are a little of everything. And these are good kids from good families. It's not just the fast kids, or the screwed up kids, or all kids. Kids are curious. They're excited about this new world. They're going to be in situations that even you think, just because parents are home, trust me, does not mean that it is a safe situation. Because, I had a parent call me this year. He had a ninth grade girl, and she was invited to a party at her house by another ninth grade girl. And, the parents called the parents. The parents said they were going to be home. And, the other parents, the parents whose daughter was having the party, because they weren't that savvy, this was their first teenager, they hadn't asked her enough questions or given her really any rules about, they assumed she was just having her ninth grade friends over, the boys and the girls. Well, this girl wanted the older boys to come, the older kids to come, because that's cool to have older kids come to your party. So she had told everyone to come, not telling her parents that. And her parents, I don't know if they came in through I don't know how they came in, because kids a lot of them don't come in the front door. They come in the back door. And, there's the girls who came in the front door. So this dad brings his daughters and her friend to this party. He knocks on the door. He brings them up to the doorway and, introduces himself to this couple and, and said, I just want to introduce myself. He did it all right. There was nothing this guy left undone. He drops the girls off. They go down to the party. He says, I'll pick you up at, 10:30 or 11, whatever it was. And he dutifully at 11:30, 11 or whatever it was, he comes back to the party, rings the doorbell. The parents come. They're still sitting with a glass of wine in front of the fireplace in the living room. And the dad said, I'm here to get, my daughter and her friend. And they were like, go downstairs and get them. And he was like, okay, So he didn't know better either, because this is his first ninth grader. So he goes down to the basement, and they called me the next day, and he said, Joanie, it was like a den of iniquity down there. He said, there was pot and smoke, you could hardly see, and booze and beer, and the lights were off, and kids were making out and doing whatever they were doing. He said it was just it was shocking to him. So then he's trying to find his kid, and is she under, over, I don't know. And, and there on this couch, sort of in the corner of the room is his daughter and her friend. Literally, you could two little terrified, sitting all curled up with each other, just watching the scene. Obviously, we didn't think that, we thought maybe we play Twister or something. Maybe, they weren't prepared. There'd been no conversation about, you might get to this party and some kids might sneak in some booze. Some kids maybe older kids are going to sneak in the back, but there was no preparation for them, so they didn't know what they were supposed to do, and so they just stayed. Even though they were probably so uncomfortable, but they didn't want to leave, because then what would it look like, and would kids think it was something? And so this is what I'm talking about this sequential thinking. They're not thinking things through. If something like this, they're in the moment, oh my God, all this is going on around me, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to do it. And so a lot of kids end up doing and getting engaged in stuff that they don't even want to be doing, but they don't know what else to do. So the work then is to say, I get you're going to be in X situation. Let's figure out some options. So you get to a house and the parents aren't home. Rather than saying, what our rule is. Our rule is you're not allowed to stay in a house where the parents aren't home. But as you just saw, it doesn't really matter whether the parents are home or they're not home. Basically the same thing. It was, because these parents work, and there are a lot of parents, not you guys for sure, because you're here, but there are a lot of parents who just turn a blind eye. A lot of parents who turn a blind eye. They're happy to have the kids at their house, and they've made their deals with their kid. They're like, don't you dare come down. They're like, okay, we're not going to come down. But they're not, they're not paying attention to what's going around. And so that's why it's always going to be your job. Whether the parents are home or not, it's always you're going to. So let's figure out what you're going to do if you get there and there's, if kids are, are using, or drinking a lot, or, what are you going to do to stay safe? And that's the terminology you can use. So every time your parents leave the house, your parents, every time your mom and dad leave the house, every time your kids leave the house, you say to them, what are you going to do tonight to stay safe? Every single night. And if it's a first time, if you have younger teens and they're going to be going to somebody's birthday party, or there's a pool party over the summer, or they're whatever, or summer camp, co-ed overnight camps. You have to, you just have to get your head out of the sand and just assume that wherever your kids are going, that someone somewhere will bring in things and be doing things that will make you uncomfortable and could be making your kids uncomfortable. And the more your kids get that this stuff is going on, and that you're open to talking about it. Now I'm going back to that tone of voice again, because this is really important. Because if you get into the conversation like this, listen, if you go to that party and there's booze at that party, you better call me and I'm going to come and get you. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about here. Okay? That's not going to happen, okay? What you can say is, I get you're going to be in these situations. Of course, kids are kids. There's going to be booze. There's going to be sex. So let's figure out how we can make sure that you stay in this voice. Then that is going to make them want to talk to you. Because what they're saying is, you're not judging me. You're not criticizing me. You get that this stuff is out there. They want you to know, but not in a you better not, because you want them to figure out how you handle these situations and stay safe. And when they feel like they can actually talk to you about it, they'll talk to you. But if they feel that you're just going to punish them, they will not talk. So just as an example, I have this is one of my favorite stories to tell. This is a woman I know is a soccer coach for high school kids, a girls' soccer team. And so, they have soccer practices are during the week. Maybe they get over at 6 o'clock, so the parents come, pick their girls up at the end of soccer practice. And so, I didn't have a sports kid, but I had a theater kid, and parents would do the same thing. When you're there, you're all standing around, waiting for your kid, and you're all talking. And so this particular, practice, I guess there had been a party or something that had happened the weekend before, and maybe the cops were called, or, it was a scene. And they were all together, sort of, oh God, what are we supposed to do? They were all sort of commiserating together. And then there's this one parent there, and this parent said, oh, I don't have to deal with this at all. And they're like, really? And they said, yeah, our daughter knows the rules, and, we've just never had to deal with this. And they were like incredulous, and they were like, what rules? They're like, come to my house. What rules? And they're like, well, she knows she's not allowed to drink. She is not allowed to have a boyfriend. She is not allowed to go on sleepovers except at the one house that we have vetted as an appropriate sleepover house. She's never allowed to take kids in her car with her. And the parents were like, wait, so how do you know that she obeys all? And so she just does, we know, and they're like, she's like, this is the way it is. And the parents, all the other parents feeling like complete failures, like, how come my kid won't listen to me like that? So they go home, and they all say to their girls, oh my God, I was talking to Mrs. So-and-so, and she was telling us, this story. And then, the grapevine that must have happened with all the parents, because apparently all the girls start laughing. And so the story was that not only did this girl have a boyfriend, but she would go to the vetted house that she could sleep over. She would sneak out of the vetted house, go to the boy's house, sleep over with him in his bedroom, and then sneak out and get back to the other vetted house before she could go. She was the biggest lush of all of them. They were always taking care of her because she was trashed every weekend. She, of course, took kids in her car, And, so that was it. Absolutely, it was just all a sham. The whole thing was a sham. And so, because this kid obviously knew, your kids actually need help with this, because they can't go to their friends about it, because their friends, then that feels like they're worried about what other kids are going to think about them. So they need you to help them. Well, gee, honey, if you go to a party like that and everybody's drinking and you don't want to drink, you could say you're on allergy medication. You could say, you come home and we drug test you. You could say, we smell your breath. You could say, here's like 10 things that you could say. You could take one beer and hold it and not even drink it. But, here's a million things you could do. And then if, so, that way you feel like, it gives you an out. Or if you're really, when you're uncomfortable in these situations, you can text us, Blue, we'll know to meet you down the block, and, we'll pick you up, so that you say, I'm out of here, I'm leaving, and then, they leave. So that, you say, I get these situations are going to happen. Not if I find out that they do, you're punished, but I'm realistic enough to know that these are going to happen, and there's nothing more I want in this world than for you to be safe. And so let's figure out how that can happen. And so, when kids have a way, and again, you're obviously going to have kids who want to party, okay? And then there'll be those consequences. If you have, I get when it's too hard for you to make those decisions, so we're going to have to pick you up. If you have a kid who comes home or calls you and said, I'm drunk, and you're like, okay, I'm going to come and pick you up. So the consequence may be that from now on, he can leave with his friends, but you're going to pick them up at the end because you don't feel like their judgment is safe. And I've done this. I've been working with kids for 30 years. Kids will not get into their parents' car trashed. So if you feel like your kid can't set limits on themselves, then you help think that through. I get when you're with your friends, it's really hard for you to set limits on yourself, so here's what we're going to do. And then when they keep knowing that you're going to come, that in and of itself provides them some structure. So it's being honest about what our world is like. And it's not giving permission. I want you to, even though it sounds like, it is kind of a mixed message, but you're saying, I get the decision part of this is really hard. I get it's important to you what your friends think about you. Not like, why do you care so much about me? Of course they care what their friends think about them. There's nothing more important. Otherwise, it wouldn't spend 9 million hours on social networking, because that's all they care about, right? So that's what you're communicating, is you're acknowledging, yes, I get this is important to you. For example, with social networking, when you say, there's a lot of, I'm sure if my daughter was on it, I'd be like, why are you spending, 8 hours a night on taking a stupid picture? You look beautiful. Why are you doing this? Why does it matter to you how many likes you have? Why does you care that you need more? You're looking at all this from an adult brain, and you're going, this is cuckoo. This whole stuff is completely cuckoo. Why do you care? Because they do. And if you communicate that to them, I just think it's ridiculous how much time you're spending on that phone. This is the stupidest thing. I don't know. All you care about is other people think about you. Then they're never going to come to you, because now they know exactly how you feel about it. But when you say to them, you're not agreeing. You're saying, I see how important this is to you. And I know that sometimes kids can be hurtful to each other. I know that there's a lot of drama that goes on, and I just want you to know that I'm here to help you with that. I can help you. But if you don't talk to me, I can't help you. But I get it. I understand how important this is to you. I'm not saying don't set limits on it, and we'll talk about that when I get to the social networking. But again, it's saying it is. You have to acknowledge this is important. It's a huge part of their life right now, and there's great ways that you can limit, and we'll talk about that. But you still have to acknowledge and not make fun of it, not judge it, not criticize it. They're going to outgrow it. Well, I hope. We don't really know yet, because your generation of teens is really, in terms of the amount of social networking has happened, is really the first, even the kids who are in college, and they weren't as invested as 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds as your kids are growing with this from the very beginning. So we don't know. We have no idea. Are they just going to outgrow this as kids, 20-somethings do? Like, will it become less important? I don't know. We don't know yet. This is a new frontier, and your kids are pioneers here. So we don't really know yet. I'm praying. So moving on. So it's acknowledging and it's strategizing. Those are the two words around this sequential thinking. Knowing that it doesn't happen naturally. Not that they can't do it, but acknowledging that when they are in this brain, unless there are some available things for them to draw on, they're going to do things that you don't want them to do, which they may do anyway. But at least you're giving them some strategy, some preparation, some, and they'll make fun of you. When you say, what's your safety plan for tonight? They will roll their eyes. They will say, this is the stupidest thing you're ever doing. You say, yeah, I know, but what's your safety plan? You're not going to say, well, this is the way it is. If you don't do your safety plan, you don't get to go out tonight. Don't make it like a power struggle. You're going to say, yeah, I know, but you'll think, and they, and then when they're 25, they're going to tell you, every night how you made me tell me what my safety plan is. They'll remember. Again, you make it over, and you say the same words over and over again. So they, at the least, are thinking that way. That is somewhere in their little brain of theirs. Wellesian, and Wednesday is a half day for the middle school once a month, and I love to kind of park my car. It's a sick thing I do. It's not but I love to see like what it, and I see these groups of kids are walking into town, for lunch. It's like the big deal, because it's once a month they get to all go out for lunch, and I'm just looking at them to see like what is, and each group has their their style, and there's the girls now I guess that those the LL Bean boots at least seem to be a big thing. Those the leather and the thing, so they get the LL Bean. But then there's the UGG groups, the UGG, and then there's the boys wearing shorts when it's 0 degrees outside, and then there's the black socks with the sneakers. I guess that's it with the boys. That seems like that was a weird one. I'm like, wow, that used to be like, and my brother was very, very nerdy when he was in high school. He carried like a briefcase and he had like black socks. I'm old, I'm very old, but he's even older. But it was in the 60s, and he was like, black socks and tie shoes and a briefcase. It wasn't cool back then. Let me just say that right out there. And so your kids will conform. You might look and going, what are they wearing? This is like the craziest thing. But so the conformity piece plays a role in this worrying about what other people think about you. Because if you take on that sort of external identity of what everybody's doing, at least it's like I'm invisible in that way. It's like, all right, well, at least if I'm wearing the same shoes, the same socks, I've got my hair in the same, even the girls have the same hairdo, whether it's long or short, or they get the messy ponytail, or, the boys have the shaved heads, or, whatever it is. And you say, why do you have to look like everybody else does? Because they do. Because it's a comfort to them in this, especially in younger adolescents, like middle school kids. They are the clone generation. They just will find whatever the thing is, and everybody, and it just gives them a comfort level because so much is out of control. Their bodies are out of control, their brains are out of control, their feelings are out of control, and if they can just have that same backpack as everybody, or that same boot, it's like, at least they're not looking at my feet. Maybe they're looking at the pimple on my face, maybe they're looking, at my boobs, or, but they're not looking at my feet. Oh, thank God. So that's that's sort of that part of conformity. But this whole imaginary audience and this worry about what other people think about you, that is really what's at play in social networking. And that's why when I use the word danger, it's not like, the danger is that, when they developed all this technology, they weren't thinking developmentally, okay? And, they weren't thinking that, and this just plays into that worry, so that, here are kids at an age where they're developing an identity. And they are playing around with different personas, and, and who am I really, and what do I want to wear, and what music do I like, and what kind of people do I want to have in my life, and what are really my values. And, this is an ongoing process. It starts in early adolescence, and it takes them through. But the problem now with this technology is that this really is the first generation of kids where popularity is really quantitative. It's never been that way before. It wasn't like, well, I have 4 best friends and 3, and it's false. It's false popularity, but numbers count. In their game, numbers count. And so it's not only how many likes and, well, if I have this many, then this many people like me, but they're so insecure at this age. They're so vulnerable that all of this social networking is just feeding. I almost feel like it should be like, smoking. You're not allowed to, get a cell phone until you're 18. Obviously that's not going to happen. So, we have to acknowledge that this is now a part of your kids' lives. And that, and there was this amazing show it was on CNN. It was Anderson Cooper. Anyone see this? It's called Being 13. And it was, if you can find it online, it would be so great to watch and to watch with your kids. So it was, they took 200 13-year-olds from all across the country. And they asked them, this is what's so amazing, they asked the kids if they could grab anything they posted on any of their social networking, except for obviously for Snapchat, because they couldn't get access to Snapchat. But Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever they were on. And the kids said yes. They found 200 kids to say, yes, you can grab all of my, so I don't know how they did it, but, they figured it out. And, why did the kids want to do it? Because for them it was like, oh my God, we're going to be on television. That was the awesome part. They weren't thinking, they were not doing sequential thinking. If they take on, they'll find out what's going on in my life. I will lose privacy. It could go on television. They're not going there. That's sequential thinking. And, and they were like, oh my God, TV, I'm going to be famous. That's what they were thinking. Okay. So they grab all this stuff and they invite, they didn't have 200 kids, but they had a bunch of kids in the studio audience. And they had, they put on these boards, a lot of the posts that these kids had, or at least before, just in the show itself, they showed a lot of these posts. And they were just, most of them were, were redacted because the language was so terrible. And, but there were so many mean-spirited, so many very sexual, not that I expected it because I'm doing this for a long time now, but just, it's still shocking when you see it in black and white. So they had this audience of kids. And, Anderson Cooper is very, having this conversation with them, and he's saying to them, so is your persona the same online as it is in person? Do you think you say the things online that you would, say to other people? And they're like, oh yeah, we're the same person, absolutely. So then he picks on this one guy, very, articulate young man, a 13-year-old kid. And he asks him the same question personally again. And he said, oh yeah, I'm the same online as I am in person. So then, on the screen behind him, a whole bunch of his texts come up. And they are horrible. They're like, you die, I want to effing kill you, you're hot. Then he did a lot of sexual stuff. It was, like probably many of your kids use on their phone. And so then he goes back to the kid and he says, so, of course now the kid just wants to drop through the floor. And it was unethical, honestly. That this kid didn't know this was coming, and I do worry about, but that's another conversation. So, so he said to the kid, and the thing's on the screen, and you see the kid like squirming in his seat, and then he says, so, are you this kid in person? So are you the same then? Is this who you are in person then? Is this how you talk to your friends? Is this what and the kid was like close to tears. So then they get rid of the kids and the parents come in. And he goes to that kid's, again, the general conversation was, do you know what your kids have online? Have you set rules with your kids? Blah, blah, blah. And all the parents would go, oh yeah, we have talked to our kids. They know what our expectations are. They know what we think is appropriate. We know what's not appropriate. We feel really good, about that. So then, they go to that guy, that dad, and they say to that dad, so do you feel like you have a sense of, oh yes, absolutely. And then that screen goes up, and that poor dad, he was just dumbstruck. He also looked like he was on the verge of tears. And so what happens with this conformity piece is that kids feel this pressure to they know that they're performing on there. It's performance art, if you will, and they're outrageousing each other. So if someone's being sexual, they'll be more sexual. If someone's being mean, they'll be more mean. And they're not thinking, and oftentimes what they're even putting on there, they're not even like thinking of the person who could be on the receiving end of that. That's the sequential. Like if you wrote something mean, that would really hurt somebody's feelings, and you would feel really bad, and you would, that you would go through that process of the other. And that is what's missing from social networking piece, is that they're in this impulsive brain. They're you know, in these settings in which it's encouraged for them to be hypersexual, use a lot of profanity, and to use a lot of, outrageous language on there, and they don't. I worked with a parent recently whose son was 13, and this is how one of those things got started. He has a best friend. Mother said they've been friends for years, and there was a girl. Remember, these are 13-year-olds, okay? So there was a girl that the best friend really liked. But evidently, she didn't like him. She liked the friend. But he wasn't like trying to get the girl. I mean, he was just like a passive, the girl was like texting him, and, but his friend was the one that really liked this girl, but he didn't. But somehow the friend saw that the girl had been texting his friend, and and he was really jealous. So this is the best friend of the woman who called me, and so this kid started writing he's gay, a lot of like homosexual stuff on there, which he wasn't, and it was just more like he just wanted to shame this kid. He just wanted to publicly shame this kid because he was jealous that this girl liked him and not him. I mean, and that's where it came from. And her son, meanwhile, it was devastating for him because these were 13-year-olds, and there it was, you're gay, you faggot, you're, terrible stuff about him. And, and he didn't know what to do with it. He had no idea. And the mother, of course, wanted to kill this other kid. I mean, it makes you feel like so powerless because and the kid was like, don't do anything. I don't want you to say anything. I don't want you. And so it's opening the dialogue with your kids again about saying, I get how this can happen. I get that, kids are using this, to try to outdo each other. Everybody wants everybody to think they're hot and they're this and they're that. But, I want you to be able to come to me when you feel like you don't know what to do. I promise I won't call the parents, unless it's really outright bullying. But, so here's an example of what I'm talking about. I was doing some work in a private school. These are the things. Remember, I said I was going to scare you, and then so again, I don't want you to feel like all your kids are doing terrible things online, but I want you to feel okay enough to have conversations and open the dialogue without again saying, if I find out that you use the F word on your, I'm taking your phone away. I mean, because that's not helpful. So there were these two girls who went to different public schools. They were in 8th grade, different public. So this is the same story that happened to two girls simultaneously, but did not know each other. And boys, so if you have sons, boys are extremely aggressive about asking. There was just a story on the news about, in Duxbury. I just saw the news yesterday in Duxbury where some boys got hold of, they pressured girls to send topless or naked pictures, and then they started a Dropbox account, and they put all the pictures in the Dropbox account, and then everybody had access to the Dropbox account. And I don't know, I haven't read the follow-up to the story because I think they found out who. So anyway, boys are very aggressive about this. So these two girls, the boys would come to the girls and say, you're so hot, you're so hot, you're so hot. Will you send me a picture? Will you send me a picture? Both girls were like, no, I'm not going to send you a picture. Then the boys upped the ante. Well, if you don't, and they both said the same thing, which is what is so interesting because I think it's out there. And both boys said, well, if you don't send me a naked picture, I'm going to tell everybody that you're a slut and that you slept with 3 of my friends. Now, these girls are 8th graders. I mean, they're not that sexually, that never happened. But these two girls now had a decision to make. They did not go to their parents, okay? So they have a decision to make. Do they just send the stupid picture? Fine. Or do they not send the picture and let everybody think that they're a slut and that they've slept with all these boys? In both cases, they went with the pictures. The boys were like, oh, I won't show them to anybody, the usual business. And in both cases, of course, the pictures got sent on, and these girls were both humiliated, and they ended up together at this private school. And so when I was talking to the dean about the story, she was like, why wouldn't they go to their parents, to get help with this? And I said, here's why. And this is why these conversations are important. Because I'm sure, I won't ask for a raise of hands, but if your daughters came to you and said, this boy is pressuring me to send a naked picture, and he says that if I don't send a naked picture, he's going to tell everyone I'm a school slut. So I'm sure that most of you would say, I'm calling the school principal, give me the kid's name, I'm calling his parents, right? You would go right to this, this is illegal, I'm not gonna, you'd be all over this like arrest, of course. I mean, that's the no-brainer. Of course, that's what you would do. But the kids know that that's what you're gonna do. And because the kids know that that's what you're going to do, they're afraid to come and ask for help. Because in some ways, that would make it work. I mean, if they can come to you before something happens, you actually can help them and empower them to take care of the situation themselves. It doesn't always require you to intervene in the system. Okay? They don't need you always. Sometimes it's giving them the sense of control and power to, wait, let's figure this thing out. And so this is why it is so important for you to say to your kids, if you come to me, and you can use that as an example if you have daughters, and if you have sons, you can use that as an example too. That you can say, if you come to me first, if something's happening online, if kids are saying mean things about a friend of yours and you don't know what to do, or if people are pressuring you, boys are sexual, your friends are saying, hey, ask her for a picture after, this is how a lot of this that emotional brain gets cooked up. They're all sitting around. I mean, they're not just using, social networking to talk about good books they've read, like we do, right? There is some sub-context of something going on. And so you can use an example like that and say, you know what, if you came to me when something was that, I will promise you that I'm not going to call the school, I want to help you deal with it so you feel you have some sense of control about it. But if you don't come to me before something happens, and like these girls, it was too late. There was nothing I could do. They ended up having to leave school. It was too late, but I can help you beforehand, and I'm not going to judge you. I just want to help you. And that's the issue about all this social networking is they are faced with unbelievable dilemmas all the time with social networking. And you can do the best you can do with monitoring, because but they spend a lot of time on Snapchat. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on in Snapchat that you don't know about it. I mean, I hate Snapchat, and I wish parents wouldn't allow their kids to go on it or any of those, because they're just there for being sneaky. Maybe when they're 8, they use it to send a silly picture. But once they're adolescents, it's just so they can, be sneaky. I mean, there's just no other reason for it. And, I have had parents say to me, I can't take Snapchat away from my kids. And, and you'll have to make that decision, for yourself. But I do have some what I call cell phone smarts that I want to give you. So the first is, never ever should a cell phone go to bed, or an iPad, or a laptop. This goes for any technology whatsoever. So the first thing is just the sleep issue. Is that the blue light or whatever the light is, that it tricks your brain into thinking that you're not tired yet. And so oftentimes kids will say, well, I can't go to sleep unless I watch, maybe they're watching a movie or TV, or oftentimes kids are texting till very late in the night. And there is like a whole contest about who is up the latest, who's sending the last text. And at the least, just let their brain be quiet. I mean, I recommend. I'm going to talk about the cell phone break, but we are raising a generation of kids with unbelievable issues with anxiety, and I've been doing this for over 30 years, almost 40 years now, and I know I look so young, don't you? You're going, I teach at Curry, and I would say of my 60 students each semester, 45 out of the 60 are on some form of anti-anxiety medication and antidepressants. And this social networking causes tremendous anxiety. That's one of the dangers that I'm talking about. And kids don't know this. They don't know that the feelings that they're having, that impulse, that addictiveness of I have to be on it, I can't let it go. They don't know what that means. They don't get that feeling in the stomach. I mean, this is really like the new crack for this generation. I mean, we are encouraging addiction here, and I see that when the kids want to take their phones to bed with them, it's like their new binky. It's like the thought, of just being alone in their head and self-calming. And, and we're losing that with this generation. And that really is a danger. And because, you need to be able to feel safe in yourself, to be able to problem solve, to cope with uncomfortable feelings, to be able to cope with life. You have to be okay with being alone in yourself. And, just like that, remember ferberizing your baby, you kind of have to do that with your, you want them to be able to get themselves to sleep. Music is fine because that's not interactive. I don't mind them watching television on a real life television set, but, I don't want kids to have TVs in their rooms. But, so never a cell phone to bed. All right, here's this thing about the limiting the number of apps on a phone. Your kids have so much distraction on their phone. It's just a time suck, okay? So if you've got if you've got kids in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, they should have 1 or 2 apps on their phone, and that's it. I mean, if you've got younger kids and you're letting them download and they've got games, 1,000 games, they've got TV shows, they've got movies, they've got, when they have that kind of stuff in their phones, you're just making it easy for them to spend all their time in their room. That's on you. If you have a choice between being in your room alone, with your devices and maybe you're on your devices too. So everybody, are you in your office on your devices and is anybody even using the family rooms anymore? I wonder those big screen TVs, is anybody watching them? We can't get them big enough, but yet I don't think there's anybody in front of them anymore. There is if you have an iPhone, you can go into, this is on their phone, you can go into settings, then you go into general, then you go into restrictions, and this is on their phone. So when you get into the restrictions, there'll be a place for a 4-number password. This is a password that only you have. This is not like your Apple ID, which they shouldn't have either, but most of your kids are, because it's like, fine, here it is. Don't bother me every 5 minutes for another game. So, and then, so then you put this, and then when you put that password in that phone, which you never give them, it opens up this whole list of things on the phone. The ability to download apps, the ability to delete apps, closing down Safari, it allows you to, shutting the phone off. It allows you to shut down or turn on different parts of the phone. So if you've got kids who are in, late elementary school, middle school, and early, they don't need Safari in the phones. They're not driving. They don't need directions. Boys are accessing porn. That's one of the big things that boys are using on their cell phones on Safari. So you've got these 12-year-old boys who are sitting on buses with their friends, and I can't tell you how many stories, and I don't have time to go into them, but just trust me on this. They're on a field trip, and they're sitting in the back of the bus, and they're going through, and they're not just looking, this is very misogynistic, a lot of violence. So what they're seeing is their first introduction to, sexuality is around, misogyny and violence. And they are saying that there is a connection now between all the sexual assaults that we're seeing, in high school and in college campuses, is becoming directly related to early porn, to young boys and early porn. And girls are watching it too. And they're thinking that's what boys like. And so this is really important. And they can have Safari on the family computer in the TV, in the family room, so that they can look up stuff for their papers, but they absolutely don't need to have it on their phones. And so, there comes a point where you have to say, here's what you need and here's what you don't need. And if they want to come to you and say, oh, I want to have this new app on my phone, you can say, make me a case. Like my friend just showed me this really funny app today where you can that they are thinking a safety plan. And maybe at one of those nights, they will actually use it. And the only way you can make that happen is by making it happen, right? If you don't get them to think that way, they won't think that way. Okay, so this whole idea of conformity is what we call the imaginary audience. Again, this is not my firm, it's my word. It's back to that David Elkind guy. God, he's good. But he came up with this term called the imaginary audience. And that is that sense of hyper self-consciousness that that new way of thinking, that teens, are just consumed with, what other people are thinking about them. And that is really, I would say, so that contributes to the conformity in your kids in terms of, how they want to dress and, what the kind of music they're listening to and what new Apple iPhone they want to buy. There's sort of outside external things that your kids, all girls want to buy UGG shoes, or, I live in, it puts different, superimposes like different, what is that? What are the initials of that? It was really funny, I have to say. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't bother me so much because it's just like doing something, it's nothing sexy, there's nothing perverted about it, just kind of funny. But, they don't need TV games and movies on their phone or their iPad. They should absolutely not have them, because then you're saying it's okay for you to not be with us. You're giving them the out to get them, and your kids need to be spending time with you. And I would say, and if you've got young kids, they should have very few apps on their phones. If they're on there, they will use them. If they're not there, they won't. And if for young kids, you absolutely don't let them put Snapchat on. I mean, maybe when they're teenagers, older. I don't think ever, but if you've got juniors and seniors in high school, that ship has sailed for you. But I find this really important, enforcing a daily 2-hour, and this is in the summer too. This isn't just about homework, although, the research is unequivocal about this, that you're, and this is all of us, we can't multitask. So you've got kids who they're using their iPads for school, there's a school iPad, and then they've got, their chats up, their group texts, we're doing our homework together. There comes a point where you may just have to say, that's too bad. Schedule your group texts, from 6 to 8 if you're doing homework, because from 8 to 10 or 8 to 9 or 6, you sit with your kid and say, the phone is going to be off for an hour and a half or 2 hours a night, because I want you to just be quiet. I want your brain. I know you won't like it. I know you feel like you're missing something, because that's what they're worried about, that they're going to miss some incredible thing. And here's the truth about this. I've had a lot of parents do this, and believe me, for the first month it'll be hell. You'll hate me. You'll hate your kids will hate you. It will be terrible, and because it's like taking crack away from an addict. But what parents have told me is that their kids have come back to them and said, you know what? I feel relieved. It is so much pressure for them to have to be on this stuff and performing, because that's really what it is, it's performing, from the sun up until sundown. And it's really important to have their phones shut off during the day in school. And the reason is because your kids, even if they're not supposed to be using them in school, they're in their pockets, and as soon as they get out in the hallway, they're posting and they're liking and their brain is tuned into what it is that they need to make sure they're checking on their phones and taking selfies in the bathroom and in the cafeteria, and that's where their concentration is. So my suggestion is that you, Verizon, and if not Verizon, you can go online and look at parenting, parent control apps, but Verizon has one where you can program it like a DVR. So it could shut off at 8, school starts at 7:30, and then it shuts off, and then you can turn it back on at 2:30 or 3, because if it's on during the day, they're using it, and trust me on this. And you should not be texting your kids during the day either. One of the reasons school is good for kids is it gets them away from you. Right? And that there is a sense of independence being away. And if you are available to them, they will avail themselves of you for things like, can I go to so-and-so after school? And you're like, no, you have a piano lesson. But I don't want to go to my piano lesson. I like piano. And they get into like a whole texting to-do with you, instead of having to sit with their frustration, or, we're not giving kids the ability to delay gratification, to not have, instant gratification. This isn't frustration tolerance. These are life skills. And this is what I'm saying. We don't know how this is going to play out when they're adults, but it's not looking good to me. It's not looking good to me if they can't, so don't let them have it during the day at school. You didn't need it. They can actually talk to each other if they would like to connect. If you've got a kid who's going to be a driver, is coming up on driving time, maybe they're 15, But you should do this one I'm going to say first. If you should not be using your phone in the car with your kids from about 10. I'm not saying you can't use your phone in the car when your kid's not in the car, but what I want you to say when your kids are in the car is, hey honey, put my phone on airplane mode. I want to make sure I'm not disturbed while I'm driving. I don't want to be distracted while I'm driving. And I want that line to be in their head. I don't want to be distracted while I'm driving. I don't want to be distracted while I'm driving. I want you to say that 1,000 times so that when they get in the car, they have that line in their head. I shut my phone, I put it on airplane mode. I don't want it. So you're giving them the tools for when in 4 or 5 years and they're driving, although then there may be self-driving cars and this will all be a moot point, but who knows what's coming up. And if you have a driving teen like they're 15 and a half or something like that, they should be sitting in the front seat of the car when they're with you, no phones. They should not be allowed to be on their phone in the car. If they want to get their license, they need to start. It's like classical conditioning. They need to get what it feels like to be in the front seat of the car, not being on a phone. Because it's, right now, for them, being in a car equals being on the phone. So it's, again, you're conditioning them to be in the car. That's motivation. If you want to get your license, this is the rule. If you don't want to get your license, knock yourself out. Talk as much as you want. But I need to see you from this point on when you're in the, except if you're on a long trip, but, like you're picking them up from school or, because, again, it's a learned behavior. You can't expect they get their license and day one, okay, no on your phone in the car. Psst. Why? How are they ever going to be able to do that? Not going to happen. Okay? Okay, I just want to talk about teen-proof in your home, around drugs and alcohol. You should lock up all the liquor. That should also say medication. This is not about trust. This is about temptation. And that the number one place that kids get alcohol and drugs, by the way, except for pot, and maybe I had a friend once who kept their pot in their golf bag, and the kid figured that out pretty fast. Just because you think your kids don't go into your bathroom and maybe in your bathroom cabinet you've got some, Oxy left over from a root canal and you've got some Ambien because you have insomnia like me or, a little anxiety, so you got some Xanax. We all have stuff in our medicine cabinets. And, you think that, oh, this is my bathroom, my kids don't come in here. No, forget about that. And also, they have friends who might come in the house and the friends might go into the cabinets and, unless you're counting pills, you don't know about that stuff. So, CVS sells these things that you can stick right in the medicine cabinet. They have a little key. It's not that big a deal. And alcohol, the same thing. I mean, the number one place kids get their booze is from their parents' house, period. Empty house plans. If you're going to be away, like summer's coming, and maybe you're going away, you got a wedding to go to, the kids weren't invited, and you've got them stashed at your best friend's house, their best friend's house. What you want to do is call the Stow or the Acton or Bolton, wherever you're from, police, and say, I'm going away for the weekend. I've got teenagers. They're staying somewhere else, but I just want to make sure that, can you just do a couple of drive-bys? Then you say to your kid, hey, honey, I know it's hard sometimes when parents are out of town that your kids may put some pressure on you. Again, you're anticipating, you're strategizing, that your kids might think that they can come to the house that we're not home, and I know you know that they can't, but you just tell them that we've called the police and they're going to be checking our house, and you can just blame it on us. Oh, my stupid parents, they call the damn police. So again, you're not anticipating for them to be bad. You're anticipating that kids are good, are looking for all kinds of ways to have fun. Let's just reframe it to that. Sneaking out, this has to do with sleepovers, that if you're going to have a sleepover at your house, you need to be up. If you got the kids down in the basement and you're up on the third floor, kids bring booze into, in their backpacks. They let kids in the basement doors. They sneak out the basement doors. They take there's all kind of shenanigans. You probably did some of it too when you were younger. So what you're going to do is you're going to go up whenever you go up, and you're going to set your alarm for like every hour, hour and a half. And if you're like me, you have to pee that often anyway, so it's no big deal. It's when you get old, it's really. And you're going to say to your kids, hey guys, I just want to let you know I'm up and down all night, I'm in menopause, I gotta pee, or, I eat in the middle of the night, I'm starving. So I hope we don't bother you, wink, wink. And again, what you're saying, you're in their heads, they will know that you're gonna be, in and out, up and down, and, it will act as a deterrent. But if they feel like from 11 to, 8 in the morning, they're free, shenanigans ensue. And again, when kids come to your house, if they're coming to hang out on a weekend night, tell everyone to leave their backpacks and their coats and everything upstairs, because kids will walk in with water bottles or Red Bull or iced tea bottles, and they've fixed themselves a lovely drink before they come to your house, and then they bring it downstairs. So it's an awareness issue. I'm not like, I know you're going to go home, oh my God, no one's ever coming to my house, I'm not going to have a sleepover. I don't want you to, what I want to is just create an awareness. And again, because this is not about good kids and bad kids. This is just kids. And they've got a new brain that sees the world and all its possibilities. And you laugh when I put this one up. Find the fun. Okay. Because here's the thing. I actually love this age. I'm passionate about this age. I used to be a therapist for teenagers for many, many years. And I really love kids this age because I love what comes out of their mouths. I mean, it's some of it's just fascinating, and they're so interesting and can be so funny and wonderful. And they can, they do things that are scary and unsafe because that's what their body and brain is telling them to do. And so they need you. And they need you to be interested in their life, not, you did your job before of like orchestrating their life. Now you need to jump in and sort of say, okay, so who is my kid? And what are they interested? How can I get to know them? Rather than I want them to be who I want them to be. This is their chance now to find out who they are. And some of it's incredibly fun and some of it's scary. They shouldn't be clones of you. They're not going to be like you. Some of them will be completely they don't have your temperament. They don't have your personality. They're just who they are. And so this is a time for you to step back and say, who are you? I want to get to know that person. And so that's the positive message that I want to leave you with. So thank you all for coming. Enjoy the refreshments. Thank you. And I'll be over here. Thank you.